Welcome to Tangent Proptech, where real estate meets innovation and goes a bit off script. I'm Edward Cohen, Proptech entrepreneur and your host, alongside my co-hosts and Proptech venture capitalists Jeffrey Berman and Zach Aarons. On this show, we bring on a guest who's shaping the future of real estate. We dive into housing innovation, climate tech, the future of work, and everything transforming our buildings and cities. And of course, we go on some tangents. If you work in real estate, proptech, development, or if you're just obsessed with making buildings and cities better, this show is for you. Because the best real estate ideas start with a tangent. If you're building something impactful in real estate or tech and want to reach our audience of decision makers, investors, and operators, email us. That's tangentcommunity@gmail.com. Hi, I'm Edward Cohen. Welcome to Tangent.
Hey there, this is Jeff Berman, and it's another fabulous Tangent Proptech podcast.
Today on Tangent, we have Dustin Lacey, CTO at Mark Taylor Companies, the leading developer, owner, and operator of luxury multifamily communities in Arizona and Nevada with over 135 Class A multifamily properties. Hi, Dustin. Where does this podcast find you?
Today, I am at my corporate office here in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona.
Beautiful. Let's jump right into it. Your path to CTO. So you came with a background in brand and marketing. So curious, what drew you to the tech side of the business and how does that background shape your perspective as a technology leader today?
Yeah, originally, right out of college, I got into sales and quickly moved into manufacturing, where I eventually became head of product for an irrigation company prior to Mark Taylor. So I had 15 years of American manufacturing experience. And if anybody's experienced manufacturing in the US, you know that offshoring your manufacturing is a big piece of what you contend with. So decisions have to be driven by data. When Mark Taylor was looking to solve their marketing challenges, which at the time were specifically exploding costs and declining performance, they looked for somebody who had marketing experience and had overseen running a division. And so they poached me out of my former role where I oversaw product and plugged me in on the marketing side. When I arrived at marketing here at Mark Taylor, we quickly solved the lead gen and lead cost challenges that had kind of befallen us, developed our own approach to marketing that really differs from the standard habitual decision-making in multifamily today, which is reliant on ILSs predominantly, and realized that we had a lead management problem. And lead management at the time required a good CRM. We looked for good CRMs off the shelf. There weren't CRMs that we could bolt on that kind of fit our needs.
What year was this?
So 17 is when I joined.
Uh-huh. And before you continue, how many units did Mark Taylor have when you joined, and how many units do they have now?
We had about 12,000 units. Today, we have 35,000 units, roughly.
Got it. Okay, so in order of magnitude, larger of an organization today than it was when you started, and you already had the complexity challenges back in 2017, because anything over 5,000 units, it starts to become a managerial nightmare.
It does. Yeah. And at that time, we had a lot of third-party groups managing various parts of our marketing business, and we brought all of those functions internal. So today we have a team of 18 that handle creative, communications, project management, technology, digital advertising, account management, and we oversee all of that internally to ensure that we deliver a white glove experience for our Class A clients.
Okay, and to be clear, this is a management company versus an ownership company?
No, we are an owner operator. So we're 40 years in the business here in Arizona. We have roughly a 17 to 20% of the Class A footprint in Phoenix, and then a smattering of Class A properties in Las Vegas as well.
Amazing.
Yeah, so we started as a merchant builder and started to build for ourselves. And today, roughly 15% of our portfolio is Mark Taylor developed and owned.
Got it. And is there still a merchant build aspect to the business, or is it, hey, we're growing the unit count with 35,000 now, we'll be 50 in 5 years, or whatever the case may be?
No, so we do not merchant build anymore. That was basically first inning for Mark Taylor and have never returned to that. We either build for ourselves or manage for others.
Okay. And how many of the units, because what threw me when you said our Class A clients, which you could be talking about the owners of the buildings or the tenants and the residents of your building. So what percentage of the 35,000 does Mark Taylor own versus manage?
Yeah, so about 85% of our units are fee-based, so third party. And we manage for JP Morgan, UBS, Goldman, the spectrum of clients who either have national footprints or exclusive to Arizona.
Awesome. Okay, that's great. So now you can continue with the story, which is
Good.
looking at a CRM, looking.
We like to say we refuse to shrink to fit to spaces we've outgrown. And we couldn't find anything at that time because we were on Resman, which is our preferred PMS provider. And they're a smaller shop, but really do accounting well. And we had moved off of Yardi for various reasons. And at that time, they didn't have websites, they didn't have CRM, they didn't have chatbot, they didn't have any resident portal, they didn't have lease execution, they didn't have these other capabilities. And we were having to bolt on third party, and that's inherently a challenge. So we partnered with a company called Union and developed our own website footprint first, built mobile first websites that really underwrote our move from ILSs. So today we're 7 years into being fully ILS independent. We don't use ILSs at all. And that's because we employ a dual website footprint. We treat our marktaylor.com domain as a private ILS. We're one of the originators of that concept. And that allowed us to secure consistent lead gen performance at a greatly reduced cost. We underwrite a lot of deals, Jeffrey and Edward, here in Phoenix because of our footprint. We see what folks are spending on marketing. And Mark Taylor, on average, is 30 to 40% less from a marketing cost standpoint when you're looking at annualized marketing cost per unit. And so lead gen no longer was an issue. And then the opportunity to move into technology emerged when we realized we had to build a CRM. So we partnered with Union, a couple of guys from Amazon, AWS. We talked them into helping us with this. They'd helped us with the websites. Our websites were performing really well on mobile, which is critical for lead gen. And we built the CRM because we realized we weren't answering our phones and we had no idea what engagement rate looked like. And when you don't have visibility into this distributed workforce, promising a performance outcome is really difficult to achieve when you can't really manage it. So we needed a custom built piece of software that allowed us to really have insights into day-to-day performance, from call scoring to engagement rates. We have a requirement in our company of 2 hours or less from a response time. And then we want to be answering our phones at a 90% clip during office hours. And so we moved into technology. And because at Rainbird, where I worked prior, oversaw the emitters product group, but I also worked in their IoT space, I had a lot of familiarity with technology and previously at other stops. And so we said, hey, we can tackle this. There's nothing available off the shelf. Let's build something that's proprietary, that's really cool, that does this. And we did, and it has been very successful for us. And it's been the basis for us now to build AI voice leasing assistant, fully generative chatbot, 44 automated workflows, lease execution that requires half of the steps, allows instant income verification, allows us to avoid fraud detection tooling. This is the key, and all of that's integrated into single platform. So whether you're a marketing account manager that's needing to make an update to a website, you can do that through a very robust CMS in the same platform. We have integrations with Google, so we pull in all of our analytics and our performance data from advertising, and we're able to effectively deliver white glove, superior performance in real time. That was the goal for us. At the end of the day, at Mark Taylor, we seek peace of mind. We're not trying to do this so that we can say we did it or wave a flag. It's really about, hey, we just want to have confidence that when we commit to an outcome for a client, we're actually going to deliver it. Jeff Mark and Scott Taylor, our two principals, it just so happens that they're probably the most exacting of all of our clients. And so we had to do this out of necessity to be better because they demand so much of us.
Let me ask you, that's really great context. This is, I would say it's unique, but not wholly unique. And I want to dive into a little bit of the details, which is Do you have any context for how much you spent on this effort over the years?
Yeah.
And are you comfortable sharing that?
Yeah. So the way we approached it, we looked for a partner who was willing to penetrate multifamily, which we have always felt is very underserved. And from a Proptech standpoint, we think that it's less sexy because decision making and perceived switching costs make it very challenging for new startups to really gain a foothold in the industry. And as a consequence, there's just not as much interest in developing really quality software for the industry. And it's also very expensive to develop software. And so if there's no guarantee of outcome, a lot of folks decide to, point their focus elsewhere. And for us, we said, hey, we will be your source of truth for developing these tools, but we don't have tremendous resources monetarily to subsidize this. So it's going to have to be something where you build us revenue generating products right away and you carry that initial cost. And they were willing to do that. And as a consequence, they have 9 products now and just started penetrating the marketplace.
So 9 products that they're trying to sell into other multifamily owner operators.
Yeah, that's right.
That is unique. And the reason I say that is we started investing in this space pretty much the earliest of everyone back in 08.
Mm-hmm.
Now we run multiple verticals, but one of our verticals is venture capital for investing in real estate technology.
Mm-hmm.
And we backed some of the more successful multifamily Proptech companies, ones you've heard of. I'm sure you've heard of Built Rewards, right?
Oh, yeah.
So Built is one of ours. You may have heard of Flex. Yeah, we had a hand in incubating that, all the way down to folks that you wouldn't have because they're really early, like Whale or even 100. And what's interesting about what you said is that, and I'm curious about this.
Sure.
Resman was your source of truth.
Yes.
Which is fairly unique. They are one of the smaller PMS systems, Yardi, RealPage, and Trada being the large ones. And I'm wondering if you had stayed on Yardi, because substantially all of the companies that we look at and evaluate for investment integrate with Yardi, RealPage, and Trada at the beginning because it's a necessity.
Yep.
And whereas Resman, like when you were saying something about a CRM, so we had an investment in a company called Funnel, which is one of the leading CRMs in the space. They have some of the largest of the NMHC top 50, but they didn't integrate with Resman until I'd like to say 2020.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't have. So I'm very curious. Now you did it in a very cost-effective way because you had the vendor shoulder the financial risk. So that's off to you. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. We manage RealPage and Yardi properties. We're very familiar, and we don't have anything bad to say about the Yardi and RealPage products. But there's a lot of non-essential functionality associated with their product set, in our opinion. And we need really refined products that do exactly what we need them to do. They do them well, and then they report well on those in a way that's accurate, that serves our decision-making. If we couldn't find that, we were going to build it. And so we found somebody that would build it for us. They shouldered the development costs, and that kind of paved the way for building out additional products. And that's where we are today. We are largely a single stack outside of our resident portal and our maintenance software.
Who do you use for maintenance software?
HappyCo. We've been we were a very early adopter of HappyCo.
Yeah, that's one of our largest positions.
Good for you guys. You guys are doing well.
No, we're okay at what we do. And by okay, we're the best.
That's awesome.
We let the work do the talking.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, do you have Flex in your portfolio?
We do. And we're fans of Flex. We understand that there's a place for it. We have a couple of folks that are clients of ours that utilize Flex.
So what I was saying is if you look at Flex's cap table, you'll see one real estate technology VC, and that's just us. And so we let the work, and now Flex is a multi-billion-dollar company. We let the work do the talking rather than say how awesome we are, except on this platform, when I'm co-hosting with my buddy Edward, I'll say it. Like DJ Khaled says, we the best.
Hey, dude, we're just talking amongst friends. And I don't think I think when you're stating facts, there's no need to couch it. I think that it makes sense. My baseball coach in college always used to say, you don't stand there and stare at a home run when you hit it. Act like you've been there before. You guys just act like you've been there before. You don't pound your chest.
That's exactly right. Anyway, we can move on from us and how awesome we are. Edward.
No, that's good.
That's what we
I
hear.
love to hear it.
That's what we hear. Dustin, so talked about, the shift towards centralization, tremendous transformation since you joined. Now, what does centralization mean in your context, and how is it improving performance and consistency across your portfolio?
Centralization for us is really an offshoot of a couple of things. COVID laid bare the reality that you could get away with closing your leasing offices and your Class A resident wouldn't take umbrage to it if, and there's a couple variables here and you guys will laugh, but if you didn't close your pools or your amenities, and obviously we're not doing that, but we are closing our leasing offices, and we did that during the COVID period. You can do that with a Class A resident if you provide immediacy and enablement, meaning they can schedule meetings, you're prepared for those meetings, you give us 24 hours, we're going to show up to your meeting and be prepared to solve whatever it is you need us to resolve. And they want less and less of us, as we've learned. If you can enable them with technology to do whatever it may be that they need to do, reserve a guest suite, submit a service request, pay their rent, whatever it may be, and it's doable and it's achievable, which is why today we have 15 properties that have closed leasing offices as we're rolling out this centralized model. But the only way we can do that confidently is if we have the appropriate technology in place, A, to reveal the performance thereof, and B, to underwrite the delivery of the operations. So for us, it was really important to take the CRM that we developed 6 years ago and pivot it into a multi-property capable tool that allowed us to utilize technology not just on the front end or customer facing, resident, prospect, applicant facing, but also for our team members. We needed to be a force multiplier, allow us to do many things quickly, sometimes simultaneously. And so utilizing AI to do that, to listen to our phone calls in real time, suggest responses or provide answers to questions on call, because a concierge may be handling a call while also typing out an email or answering an SMS. We need to be able to do these things well in a way that doesn't create a perception of deficiency from a service level standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
While our Class A residents, they whom we term the model minority, and their average household income is about $135,000 a year, they might not perceive the world as bending to them, but they know what good looks like. So we have to be able to meet them where their expectations are. After all, we term ourselves luxury. And so centralization for us has really resulted in a handful of outcomes that have been favorable for us. Number one, it's reduced our payroll on-prem. After COVID, inherent to our industry prior to COVID, but really exacerbated and now an acute issue in our industry, is the fact that it's very difficult to find quality employees, right? It's not the early 2000s. Multifamily is not deemed a sexy industry. And it's really challenging to attract and retain individuals. We have significantly high turnover rates at our entry-level roles, leasing consultant and service technician. As a consequence, we need to standardize some of the capabilities and move those either to technology or to a specialist. And we've done that. We started first with concierge and lead management. In 2018, we started this process, not knowing that it would expand to what it is today. And we realized that, hey, if we answer the vast majority of our phone calls during leasing hours, it really improves our performance and drives out costs. And we did some research on this. We found that the probability of converting a lead to a lease, if we don't answer the phone, is less than 2% at Mark Taylor. So it's almost not worth even calling that lead back. If we do answer the phone, the probability of that lead converting to a lease is much higher, 25 to 40%, in some cases higher than 40%. So critical and essential for us is that we answer our phones. It seems simple, but the industry on average, according to Yardi last year at a conference, answers its phone during leasing hours at a 30 to 40% clip. And folks are wondering why their advertising costs have exploded. Centralization for us has saved us money from a payroll staffing standpoint. It has improved performance because we now have specialized roles, right? We started with lead management. We really started with lead gen, right? Because we have digital advertising capabilities in-house, but lead management, and then we've expanded to resident management. And now we have maintenance, we have accounting, we've pulled assistant managers off properties for those properties that have not yet fully centralized. And we really realized that we can perform better with less personnel and reduce our overall costs. And this is measurable and evidence for third party, because when you're fee-based like we are, it's not an exciting conversation sometimes when you come to a third party client and say, hey, look, we're looking to reduce your staffing footprint sizably. That seems antithetical to successful operational outcomes for them. But if you have the data, that becomes a much easier and more compelling conversation.
The future of real estate is here. And by here, I mean in Las Vegas this September. Join the largest, most global gathering of industry innovators leading the change in the built world, from construction to transaction, for 3 days of networking, learning, and ecosystem advancement. With trillions of dollars of assets and the best global innovators under one roof, the future of the built world happens here at Blueprint. Blueprint 2025 takes place at the Venetian, Las Vegas from September 16th to the 18th. Tangent listeners save $300 on your all-access pass by visiting blueprintvegas.com/tangent. That's blueprintvegas.com/tangent for a $300 discount for your Blueprint all-access pass. See y'all there. Doing more with less while not sacrificing quality or even increasing quality and performance. I think that's music to any investor's ears. Now, talk about smart building insights. So Mark Taylor was an early adopter of HVAC and water leak sensors. Talk about what drove that decision and how is that impacting maintenance, operational costs, turnover, resident experience, etc.
A real sore spot for a resident is a poor service outcome. So when a service request is submitted to Mark Taylor, folks expect immediate communication, recognition of receipt, and then a timely response with intermittent communication leading up to that allows them to feel like their concerns are being resolved with care. And one of the challenges for us, especially here in Phoenix, is that HVAC is a huge headache because everybody's running their air conditioning during the summer. It's a hot state. It's a very hot city. And we have the ability to understand when we are nearing a crisis or issue with our HVAC units. That becomes a way for us to diffuse a situation that can get really ugly really quick. And one of the outcomes that happens when a situation is not handled appropriately or in the timeline that a resident may expect, they go to the internet and they leave negative reviews. And negative reviews are death knell from a marketing perspective. The amount of weight that Google places on social proof, so your review and rep, relative to their decision making on ad cost and organic placement, it can't really be quantified. There's 200 plus factors that are associated with their search algorithm, and review and rep is one of their most heavily weighted. And so we recognized when we had, I think, a portfolio average about a 3.2 in 2018, that disproportionately a lot of these were negative review sentiments centered around service. And we set about trying to resolve this simultaneous to our desire to provide a more expedient touring experience. So we were looking at self-guided touring at the same time. We realized we could package these two efforts with the right partner. We looked at Smart Rent and did a fair amount of customer feedback relative to their product roadmap with their self-guided tour product, and eventually landed with iApartments, who is our preferred partner today. If you can get out ahead of crisis with water leaks, with HVAC unit issues, repair issues, which, by the way, those aren't immediate same-day fixes sometimes. Oftentimes, you're having to call out a specialist from a third-party provider to come out and resolve that issue. So that's a 48-hour downtime potentially for somebody who needs cool air. We realized if we could get out in front of that and be proactive versus being reactive, that would improve our resident experience, that would improve retention, that would reduce the negative sentiment that's shared online, that would save us money. And also, one of the things that's lost here when people are talking about the usage of technology in these various areas is that if you have a happy leasing team and service team because they're not getting wrung out by unhappy prospects, applicants, and residents who have had a poor experience somewhere in that journey, they're more apt to want to stay and work with you. And at Mark Taylor, we really do work hard and focus on improving the experience of our property and leasing teams so that we aren't exposing them to that negative kind of experience on the customer side. There are things you can do. And if you get out in front of service with smart tech, you're able to really provide some relief there.
Truly, it's a flywheel of stakeholder satisfaction, if you will.
It is.
No one wants to be the recipient of just problems, and not seeing any benefit to staying there longer. Now, AI and the on-site to off-site balance. Of course, there's a lot of buzz around AI in leasing and resident communications. So what do you see as the most practical uses of AI today, and how do you balance automation with the human touch your brand is known for?
Oh, that's such a good question. So let's talk internally. So for our teams, we talk about AI as a complement, not a replacement, because there is insecurity there. If it can double your output, improve your communication, improve your property performance for which you get bonused on, so it has a direct effect on your compensation, why wouldn't you want to participate in that? Our industry is very habitual, and we've been operating the same management model for decades. And there's so many inefficiencies. And as a consequence, when you have a property portfolio of 135 properties, there's such differing approaches to the same workflows across your portfolio, despite your best effort, despite your training, your ongoing training, despite your oversight. And so technology for us really creates strict guardrails that allow us to deliver predictable outcomes relative to our operation. At the end of the day, it's not just peace of mind for us as managers, but for our property teams too. They really understand what's expected of them. And technology from an AI standpoint has been interesting because it's moving so very quickly. Initially, our first kind of jump into what we termed AI, which was, it wasn't really true AI. It was discrete question and answering, was with our chatbot. And, we had a chatbot that could answer 200 plus questions and various permutations of questions. But when generative was released, we realized kind of the sky's the limit here. So while we were thinking about the external piece and, hey, let's get a chatbot that can do all these really cool things, it dawned on us that we can actually leverage AI internally to help us respond to emails in a better fashion. One of the inherent challenges in our industry is that if you dig into your CRM and look at the quality and caliber of communication that's outgoing to prospects, applicants, and residents, it's not always great. And you can't listen to every phone call either. And so could we leverage AI to start call scoring and making sure we're delivering consistent high-level call experience? And so we started to apply AI in these various areas as an augment to our communication, which is live agent chat, SMS, and email. And then we started to broaden it. As I mentioned, we now listen to our phone calls and surface questions in real time. That's a real compliment and a kind of a force multiplier for us on the internal side. And then from the external side, the real use case for AI for us has been after hours calls and missed calls. Again, back to the data that I shared earlier. If you don't answer a call, it's not a good outcome. And leasing offices are open a third of the day. And that sometimes doesn't meet your prospect or resident's window of opportunity. And so you have to be available outside of office hours, which isn't a reality. You're not going to be able to staff folks with staff leasing offices with bodies after hours. So how can you solve for that? AI has proven to be very valuable for us. So when you talk about how does, AI kind of work with the human piece, for us, it's in complement too. And so you just need AI to take over key workflows, first touch lead response, chasing pay stubs, renewals, notice to vacates, delinquency, things that folks on-prem don't really love to do, but AI can do very well, on par from a performance standpoint or better. And you start to go, hey, this is a solution that as we look forward and go, what does the operating model for Mark Taylor look like 5, 10, 15 years from now? Technology is going to be a very big piece of it, more specifically AI.
Yeah, I always wondered when they said this call may be monitored for quality assurance, who sits there and listening to all the calls? And the answer is probably not many people, but now there's really no excuse. Now we can really listen to them.
We can.
Now let's shift gears a little bit here, talk about the multifamily macro context. So the Arizona and Nevada landscape, where the two very competitive Sunbelt markets where you operate, how do you see supply, demand, and pricing dynamics playing out right now?
Very competitive. 25,000 new units of supply since 24
Wow.
and 17,000 new units of Class A supply this year alone. We're growing ourselves very quickly. This is a challenging time for some operators. They get exposed when it gets very competitive. We pay attention to the earnings reports for CoStar and for Zillow, just to understand how their ILS business is doing. And I don't know if you guys saw, Q2 earnings came out and it was record numbers for both CoStar and Zillow. Bookings at apartments.com exploded. And so when you think about what that actually means for us as operators, it just means it's a more competitive marketplace and costs have gone up. And so that means that you're spending more and getting less. And it's not going to be this way forever. I'm the chair of government affairs here in the state for the Arizona Multi-Housing Association. We're going to have a supply issue in a couple of years, but right now it is very competitive.
So you mentioned rising costs, and one of them, which is pretty much across the board, is insurance. Rising property insurance costs are top of mind for owners and operators. So how are you approaching risk mitigation from a tech or process standpoint? We covered earlier, like water leak detection, right? That's core to risk mitigation, and especially core claim reason that insurance companies just don't want to pay for anymore. Water damage, water leaks.
This is true.
I think the average water loss is about $65,000 and 3 months of tenant displacement, according to Chubb Insurance. So certainly something that insurance companies don't want to pay for anymore. So
yeah, I mean, insurance costs have gone up, Edward. Unfortunately for us, one of our big claim to fames when we were in pitch meetings is that our cost of insurance is fractional compared to everybody else, but it continues to go up. Hence the need for smart tech that allows us to be proactive and avoid those situations. Because it's not just a cost thing, it's also an experiential piece for your residents. Nobody likes to have those situations befall them. That hurts us. Retention today is never more important as we're trying to hold rents. And utilizing technology to help alleviate some of the pain of the ever kind of growing insurance costs is very important. I would say that from an industry and prop tech perspective, if I were looking for areas to invest in prop tech and maybe provide value, this might be one of the areas that I would focus on, because I think there's room for more opportunity and for more product solutions relative to this, because I don't see the current trajectory changing much.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Especially when it comes to weather-related water leak issues and even non-weather water-related leak issues. I'm curious what your insurance provider would say if you were to install water leak detectors in your point of leak. The reason I'm bringing this up is us at ProCentry. We have a client in, for example, in Midtown Manhattan, where they started monitoring every HVAC unit. They have PTAC units at 800 unit building, and their underlying commercial insurance renewal was going to go up by 20%. However, after they installed the water leak detectors in their AC units, their renewal increase went up by just 8%.
Attributable to the fact that they added this monitoring?
Yes, the insurance wanted to see a water mitigation plan and wanted to see how they will swiftly attack water leaks by monitoring them and acting as soon as the leak starts versus letting the leak drip and cross multiple floors and let 3 floors down the resident call that it's raining inside. Insurance companies are seeing comfort in the fact that, especially buildings like yours that I assume have 24/7 staff, if you have staff on site that can address a water leak at the point of leak and be notified that there's a water leak, it's in unit 21J, it's in the AC unit in the master bedroom.
Yep.
Even if the resident is not in there, you can go and tackle it. So just putting it out there, maybe a conversation worth having with your insurance.
I will say that we have water leak detection in many of our units for the specific reason that you highlight. HVAC is something that we're looking at today What that means in real terms from a renewal standpoint, a commercial renewal standpoint, I don't know. But I have to assume, to your question, that it's favorable when it comes to renewing.
Advice for Proptech founders. So, Proptech founders trying to sell into operators like Mark Taylor. What do you wish more of them understood about how purchasing decisions are made?
Oh, that's a big question. I'll be fully candid. A lot of the decision makers at the highest level came from working on property. And I think there's a real aversion to risk and stepping out and potentially failing a full view via the adoption of a new product or a new product category is really scary for folks.
Bingo.
And I think the perceived switching costs are probably overstated for folks because of the really poor, in my personal opinion, support structure for our industry. And that's a byproduct of the large PMS providers, some who charge for it. And it's just unfortunate. Having worked in solar and semiconductor, oil and gas, and most recently in irrigation, I'm shocked at how poor some of the support levels are. Some of the support we get from software, specifically from Proptech companies, it's almost like it's an afterthought. And when people go, hey, why are you guys on Resman? Like, why are you guys still on Resman? Number one, they have an open architecture. They're willing to allow integrations at a modest fee. That's very valuable for us. Number two, their support posture is very strong. And it doesn't seem like a huge deal, but it really does matter for us. I wish I had some profound insight here relative to.
No. Don't shortchange this opinion, because that's one part of the equation. The other is we've been in this business for 17 years and we've only invested in 53 companies. And part of the reason is if the founders don't have a reference set for real estate, or somebody on their founding team doesn't understand real estate, operating modalities, the sales ceremony, understanding the implementation risk that a customer is going to take, they're going to fail. And this is because you've heard no one gets fired for saying no, right? That
Yeah.
risk aversion is
Mhm.
a natural tendency in real estate because the dollars can get so big so fast. And so that is one half of the equation. If you're trying to sell into and you can't appreciate the necessity to hold the hand of the person that you're selling into, which
Mhm.
from our point of view makes the company potentially not investable. We see everything, we invest in almost nothing because we're looking for a venture return. Our investors expect us, when we invest in a company, to 3, 5, 10, 20x their money. The only way to do that is if you don't have to hold hand the whole time, which means that the vast majority of these companies have no shot at being able to deliver that venture return, which means their funding, their capitalization has to come from a different place. So it's an incredibly complex
Mm.
equation for founders to navigate, and they have to be honest with themselves. And the other thing is that if somebody approaches you and says, hey, Dustin, I've got this great blank for blank, and you say, cool, what's it cost? And they say, oh, it's only $1 per door per month.
Yeah.
And they say, it's so cheap. And you'll say right back to them, but we have dozens of companies that are approaching us with $1 per door per month, which when you add it all up, erodes our margins. So for the founders to understand the sensitivity around pricing, that's another thing that they really need to be able to have a strong grasp. But I think your answer, again, half the equation and spot on.
Yeah. To your point, I think if I had one tiny nugget of advice to share, I think outcomes are either understated or overstated. And I get skeptical when I hear big promises. What really matters for a decision maker like me is, hey, can you reduce my cost per lease? Like at the end of the day, can
Right.
you do that? So how can I get there? If you can put it into real terms for me and make it make sense. For example, if you've got a digital advertising platform and websites and a CRM, we and Mark Taylor know that really delivering quality marketing and lead management requires all three. And you can do really great digital advertising, but if you're not picking up your phones, your cost per lease is still going to be sizable. At the end of the day, a decision maker like me wants to really address cost without reducing performance. And in fact, my hope is I can reduce cost and improve performance. If you can talk to me in those terms and show me how that can be achieved, I'm willing to pay more for software if it means that my overall cost is reduced, right? I'll
Right.
pay more for digital advertising. Oh, your marketing big is 25% for digital advertising. Great. If your CRM software is $250 a unit, I don't care if my cost per lease is less. So I think the conversation sometimes centers on the per unit cost or whatever it may be, instead of saying, hey, what is your cost per lead today? What is your cost per lease today? Great. What if we could take it from there to here? Yes, our CRM's $1 more than what you're paying today, but don't you care about your cost per lead? Don't you ultimately care about your cost per lease? And you're not going to have anybody say no to that. And so if you can reframe this in a way that logically they can't refute, I think it's more helpful from a sales perspective.
I agree.
I agree with most that's been said. However, to the point of exaggerating outcomes now, and I've seen this firsthand, and it's very hard because the founders, they have on one hand, Jeffrey Berman that wants to hear, not necessarily exaggerated outcomes, but wants to hear the grand vision, the story, aiming for the stars and hopefully landing on the top of Mount Everest.
Yeah.
But Dustin doesn't want to hear that. Actually, Dustin wants to hear the reality.
Yeah.
Dustin knows if a company that just raised seed is not the leading provider in their category, and that's okay.
Yeah.
However, maybe there should be a more discipline or compartmentalization in terms of what story is told to venture capitals versus what story is told to prospects and clients to set expectations accordingly.
Well, and that's our job, right? To be able to parse out the story from the reality, the fantasy from the reality.
Yeah.
Last but not least, Dustin, collaboration superpower. If you could choose one person, historic or living, to do a partnership with, who would it be?
To collaborate with. I always loved Johnny Ive. I believe is pronounced how you pronounce his name, the head of design for Apple. I thought he was awesome. Elon would be awesome. A recent kind of addition to that list that I think is pretty exciting is the dude that runs Palantir. I forgot his name, but he's got great energy. I like him. I worked in semiconductors, so I got to work with a lot of really smart semiconductor folks on the Intel and AMD and across the spectrum. I really like these forward-thinking kind of conceptual folks. I'm a bit of an unstructured guy myself, so that really aligns and is exciting for me. As long as I hire well and get structured people around me, that really works. So that's a good question. Yeah, that's probably who I'd want to work with.
Awesome. Yeah, I think John Ive, who's now at OpenAI, helping them build wearables. So what a resume. Dustin, where can investors, developers, renters learn more about Mark Taylor and connect with you?
Sure. You can reach us at Tenant Source, which is our services business. We sell the Mark Taylor marketing playbook as a service, so digital advertising and the software piece. So if you want Mark Taylor outcomes, better performance, lower costs, we now make that available. So you can find us typically at most conferences. We'll be there. Me personally, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm an open book. I love to talk about centralization. I love to talk about marketing specifically. And technology is something that I have a strong affinity for. So I love to talk about that as well. So feel free to reach out if you feel so compelled.
Dustin Lacey, CTO at Mark Taylor, the leading developer, owner, and investment manager of luxury multifamily communities in Arizona and Nevada. Thank you so much for coming to Tangent today and sharing your wisdom, your insights, and your experience with us.
Awesome. Thank you both.
You got it. Take care.
Muchas gracias, and thank you for listening to this episode of Tangent Proptech. If you learned something new or enjoyed the conversation, text a friend the link to this episode right now. You can find links, resources, and ways to connect with us in the show notes, or reach out anytime at tangentcommunity@gmail.com or on LinkedIn. We love interview suggestions, topic ideas, or just a friendly hello. Tangent Proptech is co-hosted by me, Edward Cohen, along with Jeffrey Berman and Zach Ahrens.